best 9 would be called, deriving a second 9 in reserve. Somebody approached the sergeant, who approached the lieutenant, who approached the captain, who approached, with beer, it was rumored, the colonel. The colonel granted permission for the match so long as 2 conditions were met. All fatigue duty should be carried out regularly and impeccably before, during, and after said match, and he, the colonel, should serve as umpire, with all the attending conventional courtesies. More beer, it was understood. Hayes knew himself to be lucky, observing that other fresh fish like himself had received no particular welcome of any kind at Brandy Station, save the daily misery of drilling in the muck, sleeping in the cold, and the ubiquitous threat of contagion. And many were received with suspicion, as unfit substitutes or bounty jumpers. He was especially glad to have been procured for the special purpose of getting up a match and overseeing practices, because his sister Sarah's letters from Hicks Street lacked any grasp of the course he'd chosen. Why, she wanted to know repeatedly, had he found it compulsory to forsake her, forsake his mates at his club, who'd so generously embraced and promoted him, forsake his plans for school, when his name had never been drawn in any draft lottery? And what was to become of her, with Summerfield, her only living family, this side of the Atlantic, should, God forbid, he not return? Did he not think it a sufficient loss in the span of only a few years, their having been orphaned? These were harder questions, or at least required longer, more thoughtful answers than those of the infantry boys in Virginia who wanted to know how the Eckford Club of Brooklyn had fared last season. A reduced number of games, only 10, but all wins, and the championship for the second year in a row. And had Hayes ever the chance to know the great Jim Creighton, inventor of the sinister speedball and dewdrop? Tempted to lie, Hayes told the truth. He knew somebody who'd known Creighton. A sad story, somebody said, that Creighton boy, dying so young. Tragic, said another. The boy's heart stopped for no clear reason. Ironic, said a third, dying young like that without ever setting foot on a battlefield. The soldiers, many of whom had survived against great odds and who'd shown valor at Kelly's Ford and Mine Run, proved diffident when it came to volunteering for a legitimate baseball team. But of course everyone already knew who the best players were, and all that was needed was some legitimate nominating, followed by a bit of legitimate coaxing. The chaplain, a sanguine, bespectacled fellow from Yonkers, manufactured 5 very fine, if lively, baseballs by cutting strips of rubber from old overshoes, boiling the strips till they grew gummy and could be formed into small spheres, then wrapping these with yarn and covering them with horsehide. Soldiers whittled a number of bats from a variety of woods and in a variety of lengths and shapes. They found no entirely suitable plot of ground, though the patch they settled on was acceptable but for an alarming downward dip in the center field. The seat of a wooden chair, with legs and back removed, was employed as the home base, and haversacks filled with sawdust served as the 3 others. The practices comprised as much argument as they did physical exercise, and Hayes, young, new, and untested in battle, found himself at the awkward post of arbiter. Some insisted that certain foul flies, judging how far afield they landed, must surely be ruled as outs. Others complained about the dubious delivery of the opposing pitcher. Base runners failed to touch bases, or not. And some of the more senior members, mostly from the married 9 who elected to call themselves the twig hoppers, had to be cured of the old habit of soaking, for they'd played town ball growing up and still very much relished plunking a runner with the ball. A hulking teamster from Bushwick named Vesey, who could wallop just about anything tossed his way, claimed exemption during practices from having to run round the bases when he'd obviously launched a crusher. The appointed day of the match started dark and rainy, causing among some men grumbling.